In my hand, I am holding one of the most rare and exclusive Canadian coins that you could possibly have. This is an extremely rare 1921 50-cent piece. Not only that, this is a PCGS graded MS66, and it is part of the Cook collection, the incredible collection of George Cook. George Cook, for decades, collected some of the most rare and valuable Canadian coins. This very coin went up for auction in 2019 and sold for over $240,000 US. And if you're wondering how on earth I managed to get this very coin in my hands, well, the answer is pretty simple. This coin and the holder it's in are 100% counterfeit. This is not a real coin. We're going to take a closer look at this and some other counterfeits. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Cat Roll Hunter. A few months ago, one of my regular viewers and a former neighbor of mine reached out to me and said that he was looking through a friend's collection that he had inherited from his father-in-law who had recently passed. They were going through the collection and found this coin in a PCGS holder. Suspecting that it was probably something special, he looked it up and his jaw almost hit the floor when they saw what these coins were going for. The 1921 50-cent piece was produced in pretty normal numbers, but the vast majority of the 50-cent pieces that year were actually melted down. There just was no demand for them. So they were never actually circulated regularly. This is one of the very few that still exists. Well, I should say it would have been, except that it's not real. I asked him to send me some pictures, which he did. I said to him, if this is a legitimate coin, then it's probably worth a lot of money. How on earth did your friend's father-in-law get it into his collection? And they had no idea. They don't know where he got it, how much he might have spent on it. They don't know the history of it at all. They just knew that he had it there. What's really interesting is that it's in this PCGS holder, and this would give a lot of people some comfort. They wouldn't even think that this might actually be a counterfeit, considering the fact that it's been apparently authenticated and preserved and cataloged by PCGS, one of the premier grading companies in the States. But when he sent me the pictures, it didn't take me very long at all to figure out that this was a counterfeit. So I'll get into the details of how I figured that out quickly. We'll show you what I looked for and what you could see on something like this. And then we'll talk a little bit about why this is so horrible for the hobby. This is just crazy. Now, before I go too far, I should probably say that one of the reasons why this was so easy for me to identify as a counterfeit is because it's in this PCGS holder and it specifically says it's from the Cook collection. And George Cook was a famous coin collector, and his entire collection went up for auction not that long ago, back in 2019, I think. So that right away made it a little bit suspicious that somebody would just have gotten one of these coins in their collection, a very famous and extremely hard to come by coin, and the family wouldn't know anything about it. And this wasn't necessarily an extremely rich family or anything like that. So that didn't make much sense. But what is really curious is that on this holder, this is actually the PCGS certification number for this. And because this was up at auction, I was able to find high definition pictures of the exact coin and the holder that it was in. And I could see some differences. I'm going to show you what I found here. In fact, I've got it up on Heritage Auctions. And this is a high definition close-up picture of the coin, 50 cents from 1921. We can see all of the tarnishing that's on here and the discoloration, which should make it pretty easy for us to match and identify. I'm going to throw the other one up on the scope. We'll take a quick peek and compare these two. So here's the coin under the scope and the high definition PCGS image side by side. Now there's a lot of scratches on this plastic case, but it doesn't take much investigation to see that the coin in the holder doesn't have anywhere near the detail that we see on the actual legitimate coin. All the veining and the leaves here, the detail in the crown, they're just completely missing from this coin. This coin is nowhere near a mint state 66. So it didn't take long to see that there are differences. I don't see the discoloration that we see on the actual coin in that spot. There's like a little something there, but not really. All of the marks, they're just not there. But it's more than that. It's even the holder itself. Now it actually has a holographic PCGS strip. That would probably fool a lot of people. But I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna pull up one of the other images on here. So there are differences. First of all, this case here is a darker blue than we see in the actual PCGS. Even if we decide that that has to do with the image or the lighting, look at the PCGS crest here. It's gold and sparkly, and it has this microscopic printing. PCGS secure. And if we look over here, there is no detail in there. I'm zoomed in. It is just a color photocopy or something like that. It's just a representation of that, but it doesn't have any of the detail. And the sparkliness that is on here, whatever that application is just printed on there. It is not real at all. What is very curious is that they actually used the real number off of here. So it was easy for me to look it up on the PCGS website. But another giveaway is that the barcode is different. See, we've got a thin line, a thick line, and a space. The real barcode is 4 thin lines in a row, a thick line, and a space. So it's not even actually the real barcode. There is detail in this slab. I can see PCGS on there. So somebody went to a great deal of trouble to try to make this look as legitimate as possible. As I said, I have no idea what this gentleman paid for the coin, what he thought it was, but I would expect that just the fact that it was preserved in a PCGS slab, he might have paid a fair bit of money for it, perhaps not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but he wouldn't have had an opportunity to question whether or not it was real. He probably took this as a sign of legitimacy and authenticity, and he might have paid a fair deal for it. In fact, I think if you're offered something that you think is very, very valuable for what seems like a significant deal, there might even be more psychological pressure to pick it up. If somebody said, I just want $3,000 for it, for instance, or $5,000, but you think it might be worth $100,000, you might be inclined to snap it up. I don't know what he paid. I have no idea. I don't want to speculate, I guess, but I can imagine that that would have happened. Now, what's also curious and crazy about this is that after they found this, they found another one. And so what are the chances that he would have 2 very valuable and rare coins of the same variety in the collection? So there are lots of markers, I think, on this coin that tell us that it's not real. We'll throw this one under the scope here. We don't have the holder. But I think one of the things we can look at is even just the detail. I'll flip it over to the other side here. The denticles on this coin, right by GRA, they're almost gone. And the real coin clearly has the rim denticles preserved all the way across. I'm sure there is a lot of detail in here that doesn't quite match up with the real coin, but it does seem to be a pretty sophisticated copy. There's enough detail in there that I think it would fool novice collectors for sure. And another thing that's very curious is that it has the sound of silver too. It's got that high-pitched ring to it. So very, very interesting. There's a few other tests we could do to just confirm that this isn't real. One thing is, does it meet the specifications? One thing I think we can try is just, does it weigh what it should weigh? Here it is in the Charlton catalog, and there's a big entry on the 1921 50-cent piece because, of course, this was a year where, you can see that over 200,000 of them are made, but all but maybe about 75 of them were melted down by the mint. So the prices are just crazy. Even in a G4, if you were fortunate enough to find one of these 75 or so coins, it's worth tens of thousands of dollars. So the specifications, it should weigh 11.66 grams. When I put this one on the scale, it is going to weigh like 10.42. Whether or not this contains any silver at all, who knows? It possibly could. Probably it is, even if it has silver, it's probably not sterling silver like it should be, or else it would weigh close to what it should be in the specifications. But this is just not a legitimate coin, and it's really not worth anything at all. So really unfortunate. I just thought it would be very interesting to do a video for you guys to see what at first glance might be a real coin, a rare coin, only to find that it is in fact fake. Now, if you watch my channel regularly, you know that there is actually an epidemic of fake coins here in Canada. These here are fake circulating toonies, $2 coins. These are all fake coins. They look pretty convincing. They've got a lot of detail. Almost nobody can tell the difference between these and legitimate $2 coins. Perhaps only the most seasoned collectors and very careful observers can tell the difference. This threatens our economy in a pretty significant way because this is part of the money supply. It inflates the money supply. And so we've got millions and millions of dollars likely in circulation that shouldn't be. So that's going to take its toll on the economy, but it also causes people to lose faith in the money supply. And fiat currency has always had a problem with that because it's not backed by gold or silver any longer. It's paper money and, worthless steel or whatever the heck these things are made of. But these are everywhere. So this is one problem that we have is circulating Canadian coins. This is just meant to trick people into thinking that they've got real money and just sort of surreptitiously slipping this into the coin supply and letting it circulate as though it's real money. That's one problem that we have. But there's another problem, and it's related to the coin I just showed you, that is really threatening the entire hobby of coin collecting, and that is counterfeiting collector coins to make a huge profit. And what that does is, of course, undermines everybody's confidence in the collector coin market. I want to show you something just crazy and astounding. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, and I don't think you'll be able to either, but it's just crazy. In this binder here, I have pages and pages and pages of counterfeit coins. These are not mine. These are counterfeit coins that have been collected by a friend of mine who is an authority on counterfeiting in coins. And this is quite the collection. Without further ado, I'm going to open this thing up. It is just crazy. What we have here basically are counterfeit coins in pretty much every denomination in Canadian and provincial coins. So it's not just really rare coins like the 1921 50-cent piece purporting to be in a really high grade, but pretty much any denomination and any year, and not just key dates. Some are key dates. For instance, this 1925 nickel, this would be a key date nickel, and it looks pretty legitimate, and yet it is 100% fake. I've got it in this flip here. I'm not going to take it out of the flip, but there'll be a number of ways that you could determine that any of these are fake. And the specifications will be one. This is not going to weigh true to what a 1925 should weigh. And on closer inspection, you'll probably start to see that many of the details of this coin just don't line up with the production coin. I'll actually throw this one under the scope and hopefully we can see underneath there. But this is a coin that if you look at it, would appear to be in a mint state. It doesn't have a lot of scratches or wear on the fields, but all of the details of King George V are just softened. Same thing on this side. It just doesn't have quite the features that you would expect on an almost uncirculated coin. There, like I said, are probably, to the trained eye, a number of different ways that you could tell. Now, this is an example of another key date coin, and so you can probably understand why somebody would do that. Actually, here's another one. This one here, this is a 1944 nickel. It kind of looks familiar, but actually, this is a pretty exceptional coin. This would have been made of steel, chromium-plated steel, but this one here has the appearance of a tomback nickel. Those were only produced in 1942 and 1943. There's really, I believe, one that is in existence that is known. This would be exceptionally rare. That would be a red flag right there, that this particular coin shouldn't even exist, let alone be something you could actually purchase. Kind of crazy. Here is a 1913 Newfoundland large cent featuring King George V. And this is actually, it's lower minted, but not uncommon in lower grades. And it's pretty accessible. I can buy one for $2, $3, $4, even in a VF, $4. An EF, which would be a pretty nice looking coin, $10. But you can see that once you get into a red, it's a $100 plus coin. And that's probably what is happening here, is that this is a counterfeit that appears to be an uncirculated red cent that would carry quite the premium. This one has lots of great detail, but it is not a real coin. This would not pass any scrutiny when you check out the specifications. If you do some close observation, you'll probably find a number of differences in the font, in the detail, the surface of the coin, to know that this is not a real coin. Having said that, not many coin collectors really look that closely, right? They rely on quick observation and pictures in books, and if it looks good, they might buy it. In any case, it is not a real coin, and so we see a whole bunch of them here, Newfoundland coins. Now here's one I got to look at. The 1923 is a key date as well, but here's one, a 1936 dot. What do you think somebody would pay for this? There's only supposed to be 3 of them that are known. We'll take a close look at this one. So here is a close-up. There's a 1936, and it most certainly has a dot on it. Coincidentally, George Cook had a 1936 dot in his collection. I got a picture of it up here. This was in an article on cbc.ca. But you can see a pretty big difference between the dot on the legitimate version. It's a very tiny dot, and it's just to the left of that 3, whereas this dot here is pretty big, and it's directly under the tail of the 3. This is just not real at all, but this was made to fool collectors and swindle them of their money. Here's a whole page of Newfoundland and Canadian 5-cent pieces. And from all sorts of years, the 1921, of course, being an exceptionally uncommon year, another situation where most of them were never distributed. So thousands of dollars if you could even get one. But then other dates, like a 1969, that's not a key date by any stretch. 1916, you can get it for $6 in a VG8. It's a couple $100 in a good mint state. And perhaps that's what somebody was trying to do, was create these that would appear to be in a mint state and get a couple $100 each for them. It's probably what was happening. I can't tell in here what these are made of. I think some of these might actually be made of silver. Whenever they were made, the silver content for a real silver 5-cent piece might have been under $1. So that would have been the least of the concern, is actually whether or not it was silver, if you were going to fake it, because the market value for the collectible coin was so much greater. We got 10-cent coins, and some of them look pretty shiny and nice. 1934, 1935. Like, these are not key dates necessarily, but they look nice. Some quarters. These would be highly collectible and pretty sought after. Here is where it gets a little bit interesting, is that some of these, this 1901, this dateless coin, they look to be made of lead or tin or something. They don't look like these where they're bright and shiny, at least have the look. We got more here, 1929 counterfeit. Check this out. This is bizarre. a 1973 RCMP, and it looks terrible. Probably lead or something like that. You can't even make out, barely, the horse. And this wouldn't have been made of silver to begin with, so probably what was happening is somebody was trying to replicate the large bust, which is a rare and valuable Canadian coin. Here's a whole page of 50-cent pieces, every single one of them fake. Now these would be big chunky silver coins. And check this out. Here's several 1921s. This is the one we have. This is a very different one. This one actually doesn't look very real at all. The design of those leaves. And on the obverse, it looks almost cartoonish. Doesn't look like the real deal at all. But it would probably fool somebody. Now this one here is just crazy. Check this out. Not one, but two Canada silver dollars from 1911. This is a bit of a legendary coin. Canada was looking at producing a silver dollar for 1911. They made the design and actually made two of them. Just two. That's it. Only two in existence. They never moved forward with the plan, and they didn't introduce a silver dollar until 1935. The two that are in existence, one is part of the Royal Canadian Mints collection, and the second one was owned by, if you guessed George Cook, you would be right, because he had pretty much all of the rarest Canadian coins in his collection. So neither of these is real for sure. If one of them was, or if both of them were, well, somebody would be very rich. Not me, because they're not my coins, but in any case, these are just counterfeits. These were probably not produced to fool somebody into thinking they had a high value coin. These are probably more novelty items, probably made in some factory in China, sold on some website for somebody to fill a hole in their collection, or just to display, have a version of a legendary mythical coin. But they don't say counterfeit or copy or anything on them at all. And that just means that someone could get tricked into parting with a lot of money for any of these coins, actually. Now, I've never found a counterfeit loonie, and they're certainly not out in any great number, but here is one right here. It's made of copper. It's a 1990 loonie. It is not real. Again, closer inspection would probably show some inconsistencies with the real deal, and it probably doesn't meet the specifications for weight, for thickness, and other things. A fake $1 coin. And here's another one right here. This is from 1989. Now what we're going to get into here are some really interesting fakes. These are fake gold coins. So here's one. This is a 1967 $20 gold coin. This was in the 1967 Confederation Centennial set. And I can tell you that this weighs hardly anything at all. This should be a hefty, heavy gold coin. It's not even close. We'll get the scale, we'll check it out, because typically when you're buying gold, you're really not buying the numismatic value, you're buying the bullion value. So the weight would be very important. I pulled it up on Numista, and this should weigh 18.27 grams. When we put it on our scale, even in the flip with the staples, it's 8.2 grams. It's nowhere close to what it should weigh, so it really feels feather light. We can also see when we put this under the scope that it lacks a great amount of detail here. We'll do that right now. And we'll look at the obverse and just look at the bust of the Queen. That detail is nowhere near what we should see on the real coin. I'll just have a look at this picture here. Got a lot more detail in the hair. And another big change, this has beads on the obverse. You can see the beads there. Our fake coin has denticles. These are kind of like beads, but they're touching the rim for most of it. And that is not correct. Not anywhere close. So this is interesting, of course. We've got Newfoundland gold. We've got Canadian gold, 1914, 1912, $5 and $10 gold coins. And when we get to this page here, we've got some gold maple leaves. Now, some of these aren't in flips. We can actually take some of these out, but we want to take a look at a couple here. I want to show you what's just kind of crazy when I look at these two here. This one here says it is 1 ounce of fine gold, Canadian maple leaf, with the Queen 2015, $50. And then this coin, fine gold 1 ounce, it's about half the size, 1984, and it's purporting to be also 1 ounce of gold. How on earth is that supposed to work? And in fact, if we weigh these, they're not going to be anywhere close to 1 ounce of gold. So 1 ounce is about 31.1 grams. We'll take the smaller one and put it on the scale here. It's 15.8, not anywhere close. We'll take this bigger one here, and it's 28.6, so it's not close enough to 31.1. And that's the hard thing. If you try to make one of the specifications correct, some of the others are probably going to be incorrect if you're using a different metal. You'll just have to use more metal to get the same weight, or the specifications are just going to be wrong. We've got fake silver in here as well, so it really is a world of buyer beware. So what does all this mean for a coin collector? And I think it really boils down to only buy coins from a trusted source. You really only want to buy coins from a reputable dealer who is themselves going to scrutinize the coins that they're buying, using their knowledge and expertise to make informed decisions. If you're going to be buying coins, even from reputable dealers, it makes sense to do your due diligence. Look the coins up. Compare them to images of legitimate coins. Check out all of the specifications. Weigh the coins. Measure the coins. Understand what you're buying. And if you find a deal that seems way too good to be true, it probably is. So if somebody offers you a $260,000 coin for a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, you might want to think twice about it, and you might want to find out how you can get it authenticated. This 1921 50-cent piece is a pretty good example, though, of how you really need to do your research. And in this case, it only took me about 2 minutes of research to find out that this coin was fake. So take your time. Don't make rash decisions. Do your research. Understand what you're buying. And only buy from reputable places that you trust. I think that's it. So I knew that my friend had examples of counterfeit coins based on the research that he'd been doing and meeting with other collectors who had identified some counterfeits. He said he would lend me his counterfeits to do this video to take a look at. I was blown away when he showed me just how many he had, the sheer volume and variety, key dates and not key dates, old coins and new coins. It was just crazy to me. And it made me wonder how many fake coins are out there. Whoever made any of these, how many more did they make, and how many different collections are they actually sitting in where somebody has no idea that they procured a fake coin? I'll tell you, it made me wonder what's in my own collection and how closely have I looked at the things that I have. I certainly don't have any 1936 dot pennies, but I probably have a bunch of old silver 50-cent pieces that I wouldn't have even questioned whether or not they were real or fake. So what does this mean for you and for the hobby? Well, it's getting harder every day to have confidence and faith in the supply of collectible coins. I think the fakes are going to get better and more sophisticated and are going to become more plentiful. Kind of makes me want to take a closer look at some of my most prized coins in my collection, just to be 100% sure. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at some counterfeit coins. Different than the counterfeit coins I'm normally covering, the fake toonies, but in this case, today's video, some highly collectible older Canadian coins that are apparently being counterfeited in great numbers and lots of different varieties. If I haven't scared you away from the hobby completely and you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Counterfeit Hunter, please click that button and subscribe to the channel. I have new videos coming out all the time. You don't want to miss them. Thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it, and we'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.